Welcome back to our next episode of Tribecast. We're talking about automating customer journeys with email automation, and we have one of my favorite podcaster bloggers in the space who's been constantly writing about it. Jane Portman, welcome.
Hi, Guru. Very, very excited to be here today.
So maybe for the people who don't know much about Jane, here's a small blurb about her. She's a co-founder of Userlist, and we'll talk much about that. When I looked at her picture, I did not know that she would be a mom of 3. I'm happily surprised. She's a host of 2 shows. One is UI Breakfast podcast and Better Done Than Perfect. So Jane, you've been famously tweeting, famously writing comments. You've been on the blog post. Anytime you do a search on customer journeys, many of your articles will show up. Anytime somebody talks about UX and UI, at least on my Google feed, you would show up on the second page, or at least after the top 15, you will get somewhere there, which means that you're doing something right.
Thank you for all the nice words. Maybe it just means I've been doing something long enough and consistently.
Before we jump into it, maybe Jane, do you want to introduce yourself?
So the last 6 or 7 years, I've been running Userlist together with my amazing co-founder, Benedict Daiki. It's an email marketing platform for SaaS companies. Another one in a gazillion different SaaS platforms. We're unique because we serve exclusively SaaS. We work very well with data, and we really boutique level handhold our customers through their integration and everything. So that's been my mental challenge, how to break the education gap, how to help people get going with their automations through our blog posts, through all kinds of educational things we do, through hands-on boarding and all different kinds. I think there is still many years ahead before this challenge is resolved. In the past, I used to be a UI UX consultant. So I have a design background. I still love design and still do that for Userlist, but like this much compared to sales and marketing. But it helps because I think UX really is pretty close to email automation orchestration, still all about user behavior and how we can influence that. And before that, before we started with Userlist, I started UI Breakfast podcast in 2014. I think that's still running. It's a big old design show. And another show you mentioned, Better Done Than Perfect, it's branded by Userlist, and there we talk about email marketing, SaaS marketing mostly, all kinds of SaaS marketing and product things.
It's very interesting, and I'm always inspired at looking at the UI Breakfast page, the podcast page. The fonts, the colors, everything is so crisp, and it just makes you able to read it well. I'm guessing that's the UI UX magic that is sprinkled.
Maybe it's just the magic of your Retina display. Remember when that was? I just love how modern typography is so well looking, so good looking on modern.
But even the whites are very white. It makes it very much more interesting. So Jane, could you maybe share the journey that you took, especially on the Userlist? You've been in the space for quite some time with the UI, the UX, and you're starting to build Userlist some time back. When I was researching, I looked upon the product hunt launch page that you had in August 2019. And that had a very different messaging than what you currently have for Userlist. So maybe if you could walk me and the listeners about how did you get to the place where you are today? Where did you start? Both your company's journey, the Userlist journey, and your journey associated to it.
So Userlist has evolved as a product. It's been an evolution, not a revolution. We didn't pivot anything inside. It's still built the same thing. We have gradually built, we spent 5, 6, 7 years building a good email automation platform, step by step, from the embarrassing, very low feature kind of product to something we're proud of at the moment. So that's been evolutionary. But when it comes to explaining what we do and how we sell it, there have been a few iterations and like positioning angles we have taken. When we started out in 2017, we wanted to build something similar to Intercom, when you get the data in and then you can see who your customers are, send email automation, send in-app messages, maybe onboarding checklists and things like that. But we stuck with just email for a while because it took a while to build. A couple years in, we added in-app messages as another channel. And we never, ever were going to build an email marketing platform. That was not something we set out to do because we know how busy the market is, hard it is to be there. So we just stuck with that point when the person becomes a customer and onwards. We only do customer email. We don't do marketing email. And we stuck to that until we didn't. And we did a customer research round. And we discovered that everybody wants their email in one place. Like literally, I heard this phrase over and over in the same words. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like that's what we're going to build next. And we added email marketing basically it meant building forms, sign-up forms for the website, and also doing identity resolution work for how do you deal with people when they become a lead first and then become a customer next? How do you transition them? And how do you make it work? Because I'm going to go into technical detail here. When someone becomes a customer, we use their unique identifier as the key. And it's a very bad idea to use the email address, what most email marketing platforms do. And when you have leads, you don't have the unique identifier, so it makes it a bit technically challenging to handle both. So we added that, and then we just evolved, keep building new features. A couple years ago, we refreshed our email composer. So we have a really cool Notion-like modern composer. And last year, we added visual workflows. So you can build very complex logic things with Userlist at the moment. And that's been going pretty well. I think when we added the visual builder, things started to pick up even better. And it's obviously one of the most popular things people go for these days.
Yeah, so let me understand this. Maybe I'm trying to summarize it in my head. You launched in 2019, and I think you used the word customer messaging as part of your primary value proposition and never in email marketing. In your mind, email marketing was more for marketing as in lead generation. You didn't want to go there. You want to go focus on the customer journey rather than an acquisition email marketing. Would that be right to assume that that's how you position?
Actually, yeah, email marketing is a very vague term. Everybody has their own things inside their head. There are many types of emails a SaaS company can have. So first, I'm going to go backwards. First is transactional email. When you start a SaaS, your engineer picks a platform like SendGrid or Postmark or something for delivering like password reset emails. That's your transactional emails. Day zero kind of technical, simple API call based emails. Then there is customer email, like educational onboarding emails. Then there is marketing email. We call it marketing email. That means lead nurture and other campaigns for people who are not your customers yet. And then there is cold outreach email, which is like another flavor of this, which should be done completely separately and in a different tool like Lemlist or not.
Right.
Cold outreach, it's essentially sales. It's not exactly marketing, even like in my books, but it's cold. For some people, like you have this label in your head that this is email marketing. You're not alone. Like half of the world thinks like that. And everybody keep using different words, but essentially these are the four things you need to do. Userlist does customer email and marketing email at the moment. And we also throw in the in-app notifications as another channel for what you can do.
Got it. So of the four things that you mentioned, a Userlist does too, right? Customer lifecycle. Yes. And do you also do transactional, meaning it's...
Not at the moment, but I think we will eventually, but not at the moment.
Okay. And what would you call for those places where, I think I've heard the term activation nurturing, meaning somebody started doing the setup and they did not finish it. That's where an email comes to them that, hey, you stalled at step number 2. Here's some resources for you to unblock yourself, trying to re-engage them back. Is that the right word? Activation nurturing?
Like I said, everybody can have different labels for what you described. I would say these are... So this kind of campaign you described, it's more about recovering incomplete signups. Yeah, incomplete signups is the term. And it's in limbo between the two worlds of the person being a lead or being a customer. But they're definitely, from the technical standpoint, they're a customer. Because the moment they sign up, they start signing up, they input their email address, you create an entry in your database, you assign them a user identifier. They're a customer. A free one yet, like a free trial, whatever status they have, but they're a customer.
Okay, which means that we'll circle back on this. Like there are 4 things: acquisition marketing or awareness marketing. Sometimes you refer to them as generally sales marketing, typical products like Limlist or even HubSpot, SendGrid automation, things like that, which Userlist does not do. Then you have the transactional, which is that, hey, you've done this, do this, done this, you do this. Welcome, you've been onboarded. Welcome. Those are also part of the customer lifecycle. So how do you distinguish between transactional and customer lifecycle?
Trans again has multiple meanings. If you go into the sphere of legal, there are just two types of emails, marketing and transactional. Marketing meaning anything before someone becomes a customer, and transactional meaning that relates to them using your product. So when in the realm of transactional email, you have the legal grounds to email somebody without additional opt-in about them using your product. That's the legal definition. What you described as transactional, like somebody did that, you send them that. That is a little bit of behavior-based. If that is behavior-based and you try to educate them, nurture them, and warm them up, that's in the realm of customer lifecycle marketing. That is done in the tool like Userlist. If someone placed an order and you send them a report, someone submitted a comment and you send the comment copy to them back, that's like true transactional email, because the specific signs of true transactional email is it's based on the direct API call. It never goes through a behavior like email platform, and it's instantly delivered. That's a very important aspect, because if you try to send password reset emails for users, they will arrive, but that will take some time, like a few minutes or something like that, because all those behavior systems, and we're not alone, we absorb your data through the API, and it takes a while to calculate the segment, to trigger automations, and to ultimately send the email. So it does not work for password reset emails ever. That's the difference. And those transactional, like true transactional email, you just fire an API call and the email is in your inbox in 2 seconds.
That makes sense. Let me jump into a term that you use, behavioral email. Could you maybe explain that a little bit? Maybe if you could share an example of what that might be.
Behavior-based email means that we use behavior data about the user, what they're doing inside your product, to inform and time the emails. It may mean that they created their first project and you're like, user created project, send them email number 1. That is very straightforward. But it's just barely scratching the surface of what behavior
that's more transactional
can do. No. This kind of educational, well, congrats on your first project. Here's more you can do with projects. It's educational, but it's not going to bring you any kind of advanced orchestration. What we're trying to promote is to use behavior data to segment people throughout their journey and to orchestrate the campaigns they may be receiving along the way. So it's not just thinking in terms of if-then statements, like very short kind of statements, but more like planning what users will receive and having a few bigger dedicated campaigns. And inside those campaigns, we can use additional information. Have they started using feature X yet? What's happening? Wait until something else happens. And we try to orchestrate their behavior, and the soul falls in the realm of behavior-based email. So ultimately, the difference is, in order to make the behavior-based email happen, you need to send the data about the behavior. That's the fundamental thing. You cannot do behavior email based on a spreadsheet CSV import. Like, that is not how it happens. There needs to be a live data integration happening between the backend of the product and the email marketing tool.
Got it. So essentially what you're saying is that if it is a single signal, meaning you've done this, click on password reset, it's a single signal you send, that's transactional. But if there are multiple signals that's associated to your behavior, that, hey, you've done this sometime 15 days back, and now you've done this, so that there's a sequence, there's a combination of multiple signals and a time ordinal involved, that's when you're calling it as a journey. Would that be right to say? Meaning, hey, you purchased this, or you visited my website, you've seen my pricing plan page 10 days back, and now you come and signed up. And at that time, I'll send you a separate email, which is uniquely up to what you have done, rather than sending a mass email. So anything which is a lot more unique associated with the behavior of that user or that particular account based on multiple signals. Am I right to assume that's what you refer as the customer journey automation?
It's one of the examples. It could be, yes. The transactional emails are transactional because it's related to specific, like it serves a service purpose. For example, if you're Airbnb and you send them a notification that your listing has been, I don't know, occupied or claimed or something, that is transactional. You can send the same email about 5 listings. You can send 25 notifications about different properties of the same nature. They will be purely transactional. But when Airbnb sends you an email saying, here's 5 tips how to make the most out of your property, that's a different story. That's all about making them use the tool better, educating them as the customer. It's a customer email because like not everybody's in there. Only the hosts will receive it. And it's probably related to the fact that host has done like 60 listings in the last year. Maybe they don't send that email to another host. So it's behavior based, but it's not transactional. It's not about, hey, your property has 5 occupants.
I think that's good. Thank you for that. And for the listeners, we will probably put maybe some kind of a table. And I'll work with Jane to define that and add
have a big blog post about what we just described, which has like different.
We will add that blog post on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me jump into slightly different. Could you maybe, I think in some of your blogs, you mentioned about drip campaigns versus nurture campaigns. Could you maybe expand a little bit on that? And before we jump into what should we send as part of the email, touch a little bit about drip campaigns.
So drip campaigns are just a term for a time-based campaign. That's it. Basically, by nature, all campaigns are time-based, but they can have different additional conditions based on behavior. So I wouldn't say that drip campaigns and nurture campaigns are different things. Nurture is a wonderful psychological term that can be applied to any customer stage. You can nurture your leads, you can nurture your paying customers. Maybe just a user onboarding has a very specific term. Thankfully, user onboarding is probably the one term that everybody agrees on. It's like the welcome sequence is your user onboarding flow. Thankfully, we have at least one common term in email marketing. So nurture is any other long-term campaign that has a goal of just like warming up, educating somebody, not necessarily converting them aggressively. It's more about building a gradual, caring relationship, either with your lead or with your paying customer or with your like advanced customers. You can nurture any stage. So I would describe a nurture campaign as a campaign that's its goal is to build loyalty, relationships, and education. So it's like caring, slow-paced, not more than, I don't know, usually. If you go for a huge deal of content, it can be every week or every 2 weeks or every month for a long time, basically evergreen.
Got it. And the goal for these nurture campaigns, is it more to just educate, make them aware of that you exist? Or is it also to be able to go from whatever stage that they are in, meaning they visited your website, you want them to convert from being a visitor to a customer. So is the goal conversion as part of the nurture campaign? Or is the goal just typically...
As a marketer, we always have a conversion goal in mind. Now, the question is how aggressive you want to be in achieving that goal. There are different approaches to this in terms of campaign mechanic. You can have a nurture campaign, nice, slow, and steady, and occasionally every 3, 4, 5 emails drop like an aggressive sales nudge inside a nurture campaign. That's one approach. Or you can have a nurture campaign and then somehow by analyzing different intent signals, somebody is really actively reading your stuff or they visited some page or like a pricing page or something. You take them out of that and put them into a dedicated sales campaign, which now has a more dedicated conversion goal and more aggressive messaging and more like you feel that they're prime to buy. So you're doing more specific things with them. There are different approaches to this. Both approaches, of course, have the ultimate conversion goals. After all, like we're here to convert people. Conversion is our bread and butter. But the ways to achieve that are different.
You would be amazed at how marketing things, especially big company corporate marketing things, they may not necessarily be even compensated on conversion. Most of the large corporate marketing is compensated only on awareness. How many visitors you're getting them or how many leads are you forming, but not so much as conversion. most of the marketing people that I've seen, at least in larger companies, never compensated on conversion.
We're really going into the field of how to track the ROI of email, because email, you definitely should not be ignoring it. Like, it's the straight channel to the person's inbox and you have the words you can say, but it's also not the silver bullet, and it's also not the ultimate way to influence their behavior, because they do have their own intrinsic track, they have own corporate timeline in their own company. And you can only guess if you did the right thing and if it was your amazing words that made them convert, or if they had something else happening. And the correlation between those is just... So one of the goals of email marketing is to remind that you exist in a very gentle and helpful way, and occasionally nudge them in case there's a correlation between like where they are in their own journey and where you think they are, and they can convert. So not hurting your brand is one of the big goals, honestly, because you can hurt your brand very easily with persistent sales emails. So being gentle, helpful, and reminding that you exist is like number one large overarching goal for everything we do, from newsletters to behavior.
Yeah, so maybe would you see any differences between a B2B company marketing teams versus a B2C company marketing teams? Because I think B2C, you can very likely see that it's not just awareness at that time. It is click, sign up, tried. B2B, I have not seen so much. For example, if you get an email from Palo Alto Networks, I'm just talking like a typical big SaaS company who runs these marketing campaigns. Most of them don't have, hey, click and sign up, because they are not running self-serve at all. All they're saying is, hey, here's a new vulnerability that we have seen. Take a look at some of these Snowflake email marketing. All they say is, hey, we have increased our efficiency of our database, or here are some case studies, but never about click here and sign up and try, right? So what I'm trying to say is that B2B companies run marketing campaigns very differently than B2C companies. I'll take an example of B2C, Airbnb, or for B2C. When you send this thing, you'll be able to go click and actually you'll be able to go transact on them. You'll be able to go buy them. You look at Ramp, you click on them, you actually be able to go sign up. Various things like that. But on B2B, conversion is not so much put in as an effect. But in B2C, conversion is very likely the goal. Notion, Canva, Miro, conversion becomes the primary goal for the marketing. But if you look at all prosumer apps, but if you look at typical B2B companies, I have not seen so much of that. And maybe that's why I'm asking you, is that different? Is B2B different than B2C?
Of course. But also, there is a huge spectrum inside B2B, and there is a huge spectrum inside B2C, and the type of the audience you serve. And I love it how in the old days of design, remember we looked at Dropbox homepage and we were like, they just have one sign-up field. And that's what I'm going to do with my next startup. But you can't replicate Dropbox because they built like gazillion level authority so that you don't need anything but the sign up form on the homepage. Same with your Snowflake example. Like, you're using Snowflake as a B2B business example who doesn't urge people to act, but they have a gazillion traffic to their website, enormous brand they built, and they have people just coming to them at this point. Why would you compare their marketing a SMB B2B SaaS who has a team of 20 people and are not widely known over the world, and they can have amazing content delivered to people's inbox, and they can ask them to sign up. And they also, B2B SaaS does have self-serve very often these days. Does not necessarily mean that sales-led, depends on their model. And what type of B2B, what type of business are they serving? Also, you've mentioned Notion, you've mentioned Canva. Do you really, you qualify them as B2C, but are they really? And there is another kind of B2C that's serving, like Netflix is serving people who watch movies. That's a different audience, isn't it? How can you put these just two labels on such a wide variety of software?
Maybe, I think you're right. So maybe there's a pure B2C, maybe there's a prosumer in between, and then
prosumer, but also B2B, so many flavors. So many flavors, so many models. What's interesting is that the personas, the approaches that work and everything is very different. But the mechanics of every self-serve SaaS is pretty standard. They have either free trial, freemium, credit-based, like there's just a handful, a limited number of models they use. And the things they do inside, people have plans, people convert from one plan to another. It's all standard mechanic, but overlaid over the unique ICP, all makes for a gazillion different flavors.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe I know we went a lot more deeper into that, but that's great. So we'll have a link to your blog post around that. Could we now maybe talk about, I think we understand it now from the concept standpoint. Could you maybe share on what should go into these emails? I know you have something to share, and for all the listeners, will actually be, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, we're going to do a screen sharing right now. So maybe Jane, go ahead, please.
Yes, one thing we do very well compared to other email providers, we handhold our customers through the integration they have. And there are two big problems they need to solve. And we have two big frameworks that address that. And I should probably start sharing my screen now. And everything around these frameworks includes work done outside of our product. It's basically different types of planning your emails and planning your campaigns before you open up Userlist and do something in it.
Before you share, maybe Jane, could you maybe talk about what's the problem that this solves? I know that this is something that's not inside of your product, but you handhold your customers to make that. What is the problem that they're trying to solve? Is it the information that needs to be in the email so that it is more effective? Or is it something else? Could you maybe describe the problem a little bit before we jump into the solution?
When our customer, let's imagine so we don't work with enterprise as much. Like our ICP is a director of marketing at a 10 to 50% company who have some basic email marketing in place, but now they want version 2 that runs on behavior and good data. So imagine that person coming to us. They want the ultimate deliverable. They want a system that works, has the correct data in it, and can send good emails based on that. And those emails need to convert. There are a lot of steps already. They're not data engineers. They don't know much about what data really, what's happening. They just want the thing that works. So our goal is to bridge that gap between them just having this imaginary goal in mind to walking them through all the steps that need to take place for this to happen. And the big chicken and egg problem is that there needs to be an integration in place so that they can use this data in Userlist. But to know what data to track, they need to know what they want to send first so that they have the data planned upfront for those campaigns. So it's without any planning. What happens, you will go to your engineer, say, I need to integrate with Userlist. And they start sending a couple major events, for example, to Userlist, but it is not the events you need. They're definitely not enough for making your marketing dreams come true. And what marketing dreams even look like in first place. So we try to come in and handhold and help them plan so that this step happens smoothly. And yeah.
What you're trying to say is that you're equipping the marketing team to create like a spec for the engineering team. That, hey, these are the things that you need to give me or send it to Userlist so that I can do my job better. So you're essentially enabling the marketing team to be a lot more successful where they are talking to the engineering team. Meaning, if you were to talk to the engineering team, it would not make sense. So you're going through your champions, your primary users and buyers, and equip them with enough information so that they can work internally and make using Userlist all that more successful. Super. Understood.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And marketing directors are not to blame because this kind of knowledge about data and about automations, it's usually a privilege of dedicated email automation consultants. Yep. And normal SaaS marketer is not really equipped and they don't have to know all of this like from day one. So we're all there to help in that regard. And also the integration part, then another challenging aspect is like when to trigger stuff, like how to come up with the right triggers. And to solve that problem, we have these different lifecycle segments framework. And another problem is what exactly should I include in my emails? That part is usually easier done for experienced marketers, but still we have some methods that can smooth that process even better.
Got it. Beautiful. All right, let's get into it.
I'm going to show you one boring spreadsheet in Google Docs, nothing fancy. And that's the type of work that needs to happen for things to be implemented. So first, let's start with the lifecycle segmentation. Instead of having a bunch of little campaigns, we recommend our customers to have a few fundamental campaigns that run throughout the key lifecycle stages. For example, we have a segment for trials. When people join the segment trials, they start receiving the user onboarding campaign. We have the segment customers. When people join the segment customers, we start the customer success campaign with them. And same for other lifecycle stages. So we have these different models based on what kind of model you're using for your payments. For example, this one is a trial-based. We have things for freemium, and I don't think we have enough time to go in detail, but the idea is you do a little bit of planning, and now you know exactly what kind of campaigns you will need. And the next question is, how do you define conditions for those segments clearly and reliably through the data, and what data you need for that? And that's when data tracking comes in place. And here's what a data tracking plan looks like. For bigger companies with 300 people, it's done by data specialists. It's called data cataloging, but we're doing a lightweight version of that for people. Essentially, we're sitting down, defining like what fields, what properties they need, like first name, last name, sign up date, billing state, billing interval. We don't need all the data in the world. We just need enough to use in those campaigns. And every bit of data has its purpose. For example, this billing interval thing, you can use it later to upsell people on monthly billing to annual plans. And each of those, like trial ends date, is used to trigger the trial expiration campaign and things like that. And then we sit down and identify what segments specifically you will have and what conditions for those segments will be. We also have them play.
Can I ask a quick question on this one? Here, your definition of segments is the journey that the user is taking, right? All the way, if I'm reading it correct, all the way from leads to trial expiring to customers, and they have advanced stages, past due, active. But essentially, that segments essentially mean the customer journey, right? And that's the customer journey that the SaaS builder or whoever it is will have to map it before they actually start planning it. And if that's correct, then what you're recommending is start with the customer journey, which is the segments. And then for each of the journey elements, figure out what are the fields that are necessary for you to be able to go run that particular campaign. For example,
yes.
Am I right in assuming that's how you're...
There's segments, there are campaigns, and there's data. 3 big components. Chicken and egg, completely like chicken and egg. Yeah. But you said it like the untangling of that should probably start with segments as a starting point. Mapping the segments, when you will send this, when you will send that, and then thinking what data you need. You just phrase it exactly right.
Got it. So start with segments, and based on the segments, you figure out what are the data elements you need to, I think for Userlist or any other tools like this, there should be some event or something to describe that is a particular segment, right? So for example, you might need to say that billing state is trial, and the moment that user or that account enters into that particular state, there could be a flow, there could be a segment that can kick off and that can run that particular campaign. Would I right to say that?
So billing state is just a data field. It's a property. Mm-hmm. The information billing state equals trial comes from your backend, but we're continuously monitoring the conditions on segments. So whenever it becomes active, we will then put the person into another segment, which is paying customers. So yeah, and that's when this change of state happens. And that change of state is essentially a trigger for whatever automations we want. Because when you just have a system, it's a little bit hard to imagine those rules when things need to happen. And segments just have a really clear way, like a really clear proxy for these changes of state that need to be monitored.
Got it. Okay.
The holistic idea is that you do the data planning properly, get the data flowing into Userlist once, and then you can solve all your marketing tasks yourself without tagging the developer team again. So you can build as many segments as you want. You can build advanced creative ideas on new triggers, new campaigns, everything on your own. So it's decoupling, making the marketer independent and empowered. And getting this data point right, we see leads coming to us and they're like, we've been burned. Like the data was just not right. So getting the data right is really important. But like we're an email business, but we really need to get the data right.
Yeah.
And there are
Well,
two angles to this. Making sure that the tool can parse this data well. We do that with Userlist. But the second component is what you do, like how you use it. And that's when we handhold.
Yeah, I was saying that I can imagine, let's say if it's a small shop, even a 10 to 30 member team, it's going to be very difficult for them to articulate in their heads what's the data that needs to be sent, what's the frequency of the data that needs to be sent, how do you send the change states, meaning they were free earlier and now they have gone into the trial state. They were trial earlier and now they have gone into a paid state, meaning like they have to figure out the telemetry associated to their own app and send that information to you. So that's a big ordeal. And I think
it's not
early stage companies,
challenging from the technical standpoint. We have libraries for most popular languages. So actually tracking the change and like triggering the integration is not as technically challenging. What is a bit harder and it's not written anywhere is what your business needs. Nobody's going to tell you that. And that's what we need to figure out together. Match your marketing goals with what we can do. So that's the interesting one.
So I think that is this sheet. This sheet is essentially trying to say is go ahead and build your customer journey, figure out what your data model is, send this data, and then Userlist becomes a charm for you. So enable the marketing team to plan for that, enable the engineering team to plan. And to the listeners, we'll actually put this into the show notes. Sorry, Jane, go ahead.
There is a reverse saying that does not sound very nice. Basically, crap in, crap out. Because if you send bad data that's inconsistent, badly structured, like you will not have a successful, you will strive. You will like absolutely struggle and die in the end. Like it's a very bad idea. So we try to avoid that.
In computer science, you'll call it as GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I had another version in mind, but I don't think our show is.
Let me pivot to this one. Have you seen, as you're working with many customers, you're working with companies which are big, small, medium, all sizes, do the teams understand this? Or is it always a struggle for them to say, hey, this is the campaign that we want to run and a whole bunch of data? So meaning, is anyone ready for something like this the moment they come to Userlist? Or every single time you'll have to explain?
It's not rocket science. And once again, there are different angles to that. Components, data, segmentation, data, lifecycle planning, and the campaigns and what goes inside campaigns, like the copywriting. There are sometimes founders of smaller teams, they're brilliant with data. They're like, I don't need to say a single word. We're just on the same wave there. But they struggle with what you should put inside the emails and what campaigns you need.
Got it.
On the other hand, we have marketers, experienced marketers. They have an amazing idea of what their customers need to hear, but the mechanics of the data and everything is a mystery to them. And there's probably like the opposite sides of the spectrum, and there is a mix and match situation in between. Can be a combination. I would definitely not say they're not ready. It's just everybody seeing like their own part of the elephant. Like one person saw the leg of the elephant, another one of the nose, and it's just an elephant.
No, that's true. I know we are out of time, or at least closer to that. Any word of advice for potential prospects or customers who are going through this particular journey themselves, right? That they have nothing, they don't have a customer journey automation yet. They might have the awareness campaigns, or as you said, they're done with level 1, now they're trying to get to level 2, and that's where Userlist essentially shines. Do you have any word of advice on how to prepare? How should these founders and the marketing teams prepare for a journey that you just wonderfully mentioned?
Stop preparing and start doing. Because usually you will start seeing like parts of the elephant as soon as you like just start doing from any angle. Of course, please do come to us. We're happy to guide you through the journey. If you don't become our customers, we have a gazillion of resources on Userlist blog. We have all those lifecycle charts and templates and guides for different types of businesses. So please do come and read up on those. But overall, don't prepare for 60 years. Go and do it. It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to learn and progress. And it's not rocket science. Many people made it happen, and you will as well. So just go for it. Don't be intimidated.
That's a good word of advice. doing is better than just planning and then falling into the hell track for that. Again, thank you so much, Jane, for such wonderful words of advice. Now, I really loved the customer journey portions of it. I wasn't even prepared to understand it on this particular call, but at least for me, it is a lot more clearer now. Hopefully, the listeners for podcast are also very clear. Thank you so much, Jane, and we will have the show notes. We'll work with you offline to bring some of these blogs and these articles and add it part of the show notes.
Very happy to share. Thank you for being our host today.
Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.